EO11. EO11. EO11.
It's not bad.
Yeah,
could have been better.
Yeah, we're not bad.
No real rehearsal
there was
there.
some decent harmonizing there. So, welcome back to the second draft. So, I'm DT. This is Alex, if you remember him. It's been a little while, but he's here now.
We'll take the shame.
And a while back, we promised you guys we were going to watch the original Ocean's 11 featuring the Rat Pack and the new Ocean's 11 directed by Soderbergh featuring Brad Pitt, George Clooney, and
the squad.
Don Cheadle, and all those guys. And that's what we're going to do.
Casey Affleck, he's a name now.
Casey Affleck before he was famous, and that other guy who is on Hawaii 5-0 now.
Well, Matt Damon's in the movie too.
Yeah, and some actress who named Julia Roberts who went on to really didn't do much of anything after that. So that's what we're gonna do today. So we're drinking beer, grab a beer. We're gonna talk about these two movies.
Welcome back.
Yeah. Well, you welcome back.
Thanks.
So, as we usually tend to do, what we like to do is we like to talk about the beer we've just cracked open. Today is something very special. They're all very special. They're all near and dear to my heart. Choosing my favorite beer would be like choosing my favorite child. But today we've got the Rupture from Odell Brewing. So, Alex, you're well versed in the process of how this beer was created. Would you like to...
Somewhat,
yeah. We watched the video. We read the pamphlet.
They've got a great hype video. Check it out if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, we'll link that down below, actually, because it is an excellent video.
Yeah, Odell. This beer comes from Odell Brewing Company out of Fort Collins, Colorado. It's called Rupture, based on the type of brewing process they go through. It's called a fresh grind ale. So essentially what they do is they take the hop flour and they put it through a particular machine that is essentially just a wood chipper.
Basically a giant wood chipper. It's like a 2-story tall wood chipper. Yeah.
Yeah, so they take the whole hop, throw it through the wood chipper. It comes out like kind of hash, and then they brew beer with it. And,
so there's no pellets, there's no crystal, there's no nothing. It's just straight up wood chippered hops, and they what they throw in and grind up that day is what they throw into the brew that day. So the result is something that as soon as you pour this thing, like that bouquet is just like, bam! It's like what the young kids these days would say is dank as fuck.
It's dank. It's quite dank.
It's fucking delicious. It's super, super floral, super hoppy, super bitter. The mouthfeel was something you had a good point on.
Yeah, it's creamier than normal, but the thing that sticks out to me is the oils. So the process that they're going through, grinding it up, the idea is to release lupulin, which is one of the primary ingredients from the hop that'll give the apply the essential oils to the beer, essentially.
So, yeah, for people who don't know, lupulin is like this like yellowish, like a powdery substance. It's found underneath the petals of the hop. So grinding up the hops as they did just made full on use of that lupulin. So
you'd think it was some kind of like placebo effect or something like that. You could probably write it off as that, but I don't really think so.
I don't think so either.
Initially, my first thought after drinking it was, like you said, the aroma is pretty straightforward, really punchy. But yeah, after drinking, it's the oils are really prominent. You can taste everything right off the bat. Yeah,
it's very hoppy, but it's also super clean.
Yeah,
it's very
does the citrus thing that everybody loves right now. So this is going to be a year-round brew for Odell. It actually just released about a month ago, I think.
So it's relatively new. Yeah.
Yeah, actually less than a month ago. I think they had their release party for it in August, late August 17th or something like that.
Yeah.
So pretty wild. It's brand new. Definitely recommend it. One of my favorite new beers that I've had recently. Caught up and had the Atomic Pumpkin. Agree with almost everything that DT said in the wrap up.
As you should.
I don't think I could have more than just one of those, though.
That's something I mentioned in my review as well, and the video with Paige. Week 2 of the NFL picks, which you should be watching if you're not already, because I think they're pretty good.
Yeah, we agreed on everything this week, though, which was...
No.
Most everything.
There was, I think, actually, the first game of the week, I think...
We were all Cincinnati.
We all said Cincinnati. We were all fucking wrong.
We were all wrong. Yeah. Unanimously wrong there.
Marvin Lewis.
That's bound to happen, though. I mean, I'm surprised, but...
Yeah. I'm a little bit shocked, honestly.
I've got the Texans defense, so I'm surprised I actually picked Cincinnati, but...
Yeah.
It seemed like they were going to come out.
Yeah. So anyway, the Rupture. It's at 6.0 ABV. which is alcohol by volume for those of you just drinking beer for the first time ever in your lives. Hello, minors.
Hello.
So I wouldn't necessarily call it sessionable. That's always, honestly, like when I'm drinking a pale ale or an IPA like this one, that's one of the things I measure by is whether or not it's sessionable. This is not necessarily a beer, again, that you're going to drink poolside and pound them or take it tailgating because you'll be dehydrated and very sleepy by the time you get inside the stadium. So this is definitely something you're going to want to savor and take your time with and sip and swish around in your mouth and, build up a talking point for, meeting up with your friends and seeming like you know a whole lot about beer like we do every week.
Yeah.
Because this is a very unique process for creating a beer, and it also makes for a very unique beer. It's very nuanced. It's mainstream, but also very like challenging at the same time.
Yeah, what I like about
it's something wildly different. It feels and tastes like an IPA, but it also feels very, very different. Like that brewing process is very prevalent, very like right up there up front.
Yeah, I like what you said about the IPA, because it reminds me of that West Coast style that we're seeing all over the place, but without the hop. So it's not a face melter. You can kind of sip this at the beginning of an outing. You go to a restaurant where they have Rupture. You're not going to like ruin your dinner. You're not going to...
Sure, this is not like a dank triple or something. Yeah, no. It's very hoppy, and it's bitter, and it's very pungent, but it's not, like you said, it's not a face melter. You're not going to... People who are new to IPAs may not be able to access this one right away. I would say this one is hoppy enough to be an acquired taste for people who aren't very familiar with IPAs. But if you're just breaking into the whole IPA thing, this isn't gonna like burn your tongue or completely turn you off altogether. So yeah.
If you've heard of Goldwater, if you're a fan, it reminds me of Dynamite, but with a little bit more citrus back to it. So
that's a good call.
And that's one of my favorites from Goldwater, so I'm very much digging this beer. It's really great.
Yeah, I'm very impressed. Yeah. So Ocean's 11 versus Ocean's 11. So we watched the original Rat Pack version first, which came out in 1960 and featured the Rat Pack, who is, of course, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., all those guys. And then following that up, we watched I'm not sure what year it came out. Like
2001.
2001. Mm-hmm. The 2001 Steven Soderbergh movie that, again, featured Brad Pitt and George Clooney and Don Cheadle and all those themes who were... Yeah.
The equivalent, I guess, Rat Pack to...
for the time when the movie came out, yeah. Which was one of my first talking points, was the fact that the first Ocean's 11 was kind of a spectacle in and of itself because it was one of those rare films where the entire Rat Pack was together. So I feel like that was one of the selling points. Like, I'm sure if we watched a trailer for the movie today, the majority of the trailer would just focus on those guys as opposed to the plot or what the movie was about. So
I'm sure that was the same for the new Ocean's 11 though too, with 2001 when you saw the trailer. I'm sure, and that's what I appreciate about the new one is that I think people probably came to see George Clooney, Brad Pitt, and these guys that they're familiar with, and then they reference it to their friends and said, "This movie's actually really great. Go and see it."
Yeah,
because of the characters, because of the plot. Not necessarily just because there's people in it that you'd recognize.
Right. Yeah, and Clooney and Soderbergh had such a great run in that era too. Like Out of Sight with Jennifer Lopez was, I thought, a great movie.
I never saw it. Yeah.
Oh, you should see it. I think it's actually slightly underrated by today's standards, but I thought it was excellent. But Soderbergh was one of those directors who I think actually, and I think George Clooney would probably agree. I know Matt Damon agrees because I've seen interviews and stuff with him. Soderbergh is one of those character directors where I think he actually really helped develop George Clooney and Matt Damon as actors. I think there was a turning point. Like, Clooney went through like a weird phase where he did like the Batman movie and shit like that.
Yeah.
He was still kind of breaking out. He had done ER, and that was his breakout role. Then he moved into movies and he started working with Soderbergh. And I think Soderbergh actually kind of broke a lot of the bad habits he had as an actor and kind of cleaned him up and polished him, I think.
Yeah, I mean, when you're automatically off the bat going to be stacked up next to Sinatra, who's one of the most suave people that's ever lived. Like, what are you gonna do?
And it's absolutely impossible when you make a remake of an iconic film like that to not be compared to it. So I think everybody had to bring their A game. So, but yeah, I think like that whole era, like that Ocean's 11 era for George Clooney, I think was actually like a turning point in his career. I think it's when he became like one of those big, massive, bankable stars.
Yeah. So. I mean, the character itself kind of lends that kind of backbone. So
it's a great character.
If he does it right, then he lives up to the character, and he kind of has that prestige built in.
Right.
But if it flopped, then people would he would be a laughingstock. If you imagine,
sure,
if he didn't pull off that character, I mean, I thought it was great, but
yeah,
yeah. So what was your take on the Rat Pack version? Tell me your thoughts.
It's odd watching it now because we're so far removed from the era in which it was created, and it is such like a crystallization of that era, both in terms of it being like a Rat Pack movie, which is like just the quintessential like group of actors / performers. I'm just gonna be completely blunt. The plot is severely lacking. The entire, like, people I'm sure watching this are more familiar with the Soderbergh Ocean's 11, and if you watch that, like the bank heist itself is a very complex thing. Like, there's a lot of build up into it. There's a lot of intricate pieces. It takes all of the 11 actors in the Ocean's 11 to make this thing happen and actually pull it off. Whereas in the Rat Pack version in 1960, there's not a whole lot of nuance.
You only really needed about 3 of the characters.
Literally, yeah. I mean, Dean Martin's entire role in the film, and he doesn't do anything of any value for the actual heist. All he does is sit at one of the casinos in one of the lounges and play, May All Acquaintance Be Forgot. He doesn't actually partake in the heist at all. Yeah, I mean, and again, like, the actual heist itself in the movie. Spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen the movie in the past like 70 years since it was released. There's literally like only 3 stages to the heist in that movie, and that's they case the joints. Somebody walks in and they like spray paint like fluorescent paint or glow in the dark paint or something over the doors that lead to the bank vaults or the cash boxes, which is silly because there's literally only one fucking door in the whole casino that leads into it.
They write it off with one line in the new adaptation where they're just like, oh, the casino is a maze. How are we going to do that? Okay, cool. Move on.
Right, yeah. And this one, like they
the entire plot.
Yeah, they have one guy who walks in like a week beforehand and spray paints all the doorknobs or around the doorknobs just to let whoever's going to go in and walk in and rob the place. But that's the door you should go through, not any of the other doors that are like not within like 100 feet. And then they all just kind of walk in and they all like grab a bunch of fucking guards and they hold them by their necks and they threaten them and they grab all the cash and they walk out. It's actually way more mean-spirited than the 2001 version.
There's a line in the new one where it's like smash and grab job, and I think it's kind of like a reference to the original movie where they're like, oh, this really was a smash and grab job.
Yeah, it really was.
Matt Damon, I think, says that line. It's pretty funny. But,
Matt Damon says, oh, so like a smash and grab job, and Brad Pitt says,
it's a little more complicated.
It was like, oh, well, yeah.
Well, obviously, yeah.
But the original movie is literally pretty much just a reason to get all the Rat Pack together in the film for the spectacle.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of plot. There's not a whole lot of character development. Mm-hmm. All the characters literally come from the same company in the military. Yeah. I think it was World War II they all came from.
Yeah.
So that's how they all knew each other. That was their backstory. Mm-hmm. And there's really like, we don't know Danny Ocean as played by Frank Sinatra as being like, he's a thrill seeker. We know that because his wife left him because he's a thrill seeker. But there was never any sort of backstory established that like he was like a bank robber or like a heist man or something.
None of them really had that. There was just the camaraderie they had from the military, and then Ocean's inherent leadership kind of qualities.
Right.
One of the things I did like about Ocean's 11, the original version, the Rat Pack version, was this like military background. It gave reason for all of them to come together.
Yeah.
And the new one, you don't get any kind of background story, but at the same time, that might be part of the reason for my favorite part about the new movies, which is this kind of nonverbal communication of just understanding between the characters.
Sure.
You don't get a background story for Danny and for Rusty and all these characters, except for maybe, I think there's like a 10-second bit where Rusty is saying, remember when I learned craps from Ruben at the Sands or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's it. And you understand that these people have just been around Vegas and they've been around the lifestyle.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the 2001 version, you get a feel of the fact that, like you said, like all these guys that make up this team are hustlers in one way or another, and they either know each other, have worked with each other, are aware of each other's reputations, or in the case of Linus, played by Matt Damon, they know of his parents. Mm-hmm. So he's got his parents' reputation. So Yeah,
it's a community of thieves. It's really all
right. Exactly. There's that camaraderie. Well, not necessarily camaraderie, just that mutual respect. And when they needed to have somebody who could like rig a bomb, they knew go to fucking Basher, played by Don Cheadle. If they needed two lackeys to create a diversion, they knew to go to the Moron Twins. The 1960 version, it
doesn't do that. The primary distraction. I mean, there's a parallel between Basher and Sammy Davis Jr.'s character. They have the whole like munitions expert thing.
Right.
Basher is just like a guy from London that knows how to blow shit up.
Right. He's a bomb
and Sammy
maker.
Davis Jr. was like a explosive expert in the military.
Right.
It makes sense. He would just knock down a tower, and that's how they knock out the power.
Yeah, and it's literally how. Well, I guess the simplicity of the plot and the idea of how they rob the banks also kind of plays into the fact that back in 1960, like Las Vegas literally was like 5 hotels / casinos, and there were no houses. There was no like Henderson, Nevada. There was nothing. It was literally just you drive out in the middle of the fucking desert and there's like 5 big buildings and there's a bunch of money in those 5 buildings, and
you can lose it or you can win it and you can go home.
Yeah, they didn't have security cameras and like laser grids and so. But I mean, one of the thoughts I had when I was watching the movie, the 1960 version, was, I mean, it's interesting that they all come from like the same company in World War II, so they know it that way. But there's never really any established reason for these guys to need to rob this bank to have this money. If somebody remade the movie in like the 60s or 70s, and all these guys had been from like Vietnam veterans who came back and were disenfranchised and were cast out by society, like if they had done something along those lines, which would have been highly controversial at the time, but doing something set in like Vietnam, where they came back and they weren't viewed as heroes, they were viewed as cast out by society. Like they couldn't find jobs and shit because of how controversial that conflict was. If they were brave enough to have made that movie back then, it would have been super fucking interesting.
It would have been punchy, but it wouldn't have been the same with Rat Pack though. I mean,
it wouldn't have been fun.
All of the characters in that movie, especially the Sammy Davis Jr. character, he gets introduced through a song, and you can't do something campy like that with something so. No,
it would have been it would have been as different a movie as I think the 2001 version was versus the 1960 version. But at the same time,
they're both still fun.
They are very similar in the fact that you've got all the actors you wanted to see in that era all gathered together doing something fun, and it is ultimately lighthearted and silly and goofy, and it's a fun, family-friendly caper. So
it's a caper, right? It's supposed to have these like comedic elements every now and then, but overall, it's a heist, it's a drama.
Yeah.
There'll be dramatic scenes, but
I would call it a dramedy.
Yeah, it's got elements of both,
right?
Which is fine.
Yeah. Another thing that struck me about the 1960 version is just the vastly different societal views.
Right. Yeah.
There's a scene in the 1960 version where they're all talking about what they're going to do with their money, and one of the characters, I don't think it was Dean Martin, I think it was one of the other guys. He says, "I'm going to run for office and buy a bunch of votes, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the right for women to vote away and make them all slaves." And
it's
and I can't tell if he's fucking joking or not.
It's racist.
Yeah,
it's pretty bad. The only thing I can think of off the top of my head about like why they would need the money, Sammy Davis Jr.'s character is a garbage truck driver, which is part of the plot. They like work it in, so it makes sense for him to have, for one of the characters to have that background.
Yeah.
But he's like the disenfranchised person in the 60s. He's a black man. Like, what they don't have any other reason to need the money, right. And I guess in the new movie they don't really either. Like,
I mean, once we're introduced to all these characters, they're meeting up and they're planning in swanky hotels, and they're constantly drinking like top shelf liquor, and they're all like
chain smoking cigarettes.
Again, there was no necessary
flirting with girls. And,
that's like all really good looking girls for the time too. Like, these are not men who were struggling. Or even, I mean, I guess they established they were seeking the thrill, but there was no real...
Right, but that's what I love about the new one, is that it seems like they took ideas of characters. Like, I have Danny Ocean in mind, and I've got his kind of like sidekick that should have been Dean Martin's character that really wasn't. And like, let's make him an actual character. Let's make Rusty was that character.
Yeah.
And then let's talk about what their background is. And the only real thing you can come up with is he's in jail. Yeah, they're thieves. They're lifetime thieves.
Right. Right.
They have a community together. They've got a lot of unspoken things between them. Mm-hmm. They've had previous experiences, run-ins with the law, what have you.
Yeah.
But those make the movie later on. There's scene after scene where they're making references to old jobs that they did or things they can't do. You know. There's always a in the second one and the third one, they really play up the whole like code names for different maneuvers that they can do.
Yeah.
Like heist maneuvers, like.
Yeah, and everybody in the crew, like there's a scene in the 2001 version where they're talking about all the different pieces they'll need, and they give them all like random weird code names.
We're gonna
like,
need a Jethro, a driving Miss Daisy.
Which is cool. Like there's definitely like a craft on display, and again, like you said, it's part of that whole world building where we recognize all these guys as you may not even necessarily need motivation for them, other than the fact that these characters live these lives. They are lifelong criminals. This is just what they fucking do, and that works because it makes them so much more endearing because they're all a bunch of like rogues.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, they're swashbucklers. That's what they do.
Yeah, like when they introduce John Cheadle's character, they're like, we're gonna need whatever they call the bomb man, and they're like, well, let's get Basher, and it's like, well, there might be a problem because
availability.
Because Rusty already knew that Basher was planning something, and he knew where to go to bail Basher out. So these guys know each other. They know what they're up to. They're keeping tabs on each other, and they had to pull him out and basically like help him, like literally evade arrest, on the scene.
And they put a bow on every one of those character-to-character interactions too, because he's walking away and he's undoing his handcuffs, and he says something like, "It'll be nice working with proper villains again."
Yeah,
and it's like, okay, he knows that he's going to the A team now. He's just been recruited.
Yeah,
and
he's been waiting for that next big fun gig. Yeah.
And this is the real deal. Ocean's going to put together something that's going to get a big payday for everybody, but it's going to involve a lot of work, And you understand that through character interactions, which is what makes the movie so great.
It's very rich. There's a rich tapestry woven throughout all these characters' lives and how they all get together. And once they get together, the movie just becomes fun. Yeah,
you were talking about the scene before where Rusty doesn't say anything. He's just got his head on the bar, and Danny's gone. You think we need one more?
They've recruited 10 people at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they go and find. I think it's Yen, right? The grease man. Is he the 11th?
I think it was Linus. Wasn't Linus the 11th?
Oh, you're right.
Because Danny goes to Chicago and he sees Linus on the train, and Linus
is like pole thing.
Yeah. So it's a fun movie. I'm sure the 1960 version was a lot of fun for people who saw it in that era. But I think, if I'm being completely honest, I know the 1960 version is a classic. It's untouchable. I think the 2001 version is an overall better movie, much better. Yes. Not just because I think the plot's better, the characters are better. It's just an evolution of filmmaking. So it's one of those rare cases where you can say that the remake that came 40 years after the original is actually better, just because filmmaking has just evolved beyond that point.
Well, people care about different things too. Back in the day, the goal is the same: get people in seats in the theater.
Sure, buy tickets or sell tickets.
Sell tickets.
Make a profitable.
Before,
movie.
How do you do that? You do it with getting big names and big faces that people will recognize on the silver screen.
Right.
Now, you do it with cinematography. You do it with a great story. People are more invested in the things that make filmmaking great.
Yeah, I agree.
Which I'm very much a fan of, which is why we keep getting great movies.
Right.
Ocean's 11
is so great.
That's true.
There's a lot of shitty movies. Batman vs Superman. But yeah.
Yeah. You mean Batman v. Superman?
Batman v Superman, the court case of the century. God.
So bad.
Damn, that fucking movie. I still haven't seen Wonder Woman.
I haven't either. That should be the next one, maybe.
Maybe we should watch Wonder Woman. I've heard it's great, but I am so... People are gonna leave DC comments about this, but after Batman versus Superman, I'm like... Fooled me once.
Oh,
shame on me.
No, I've wanted to see it for a while. I just haven't.
I've heard it's great. But it's just there's a lot of movies where a lot of people tell me they're great, and I see them and I'm like, did I watch a different movie by accident?
Like Logan Lucky. We just watched this movie,
which is actually a great talking point because it's Soderbergh and it's also another heist movie. Let's talk about Logan Lucky.
Yeah.
It sucked.
It wasn't as good as the reviews said it was. Okay, so when I watched the trailer, I thought, this looks like Soderbergh took a break, came back, wanted to do a caper movie because it's familiar.
Yeah.
He crushed it with Oceans 12 and 13, not so much, but still enjoyable movies. I enjoy them more than most people. Logan Lucky, it was like he was trying to do some kind of new visual style, throw in some Wes Anderson elements, kind of like really unique aesthetic. And I think in doing so, he lost a lot of what made the capers so enjoyable from Oceans.
Well, yeah, I mean, whereas Ocean's 11, everything centers and hinges on the caper itself, and all the characters are built out and are created in relation to that big heist. The thing that Logan Lucky, I think, maybe it was a concerted effort, like a purposeful effort to do the opposite of what happened with Ocean's 11, but the characters themselves formulate what the heist is. And as a result, there's a whole lot of really slow scenes of just, like, there's scene after scene after scene of Channing Tatum's character, who plays the lead. We'll just call him Logan. It's the character's last name. But there's just scene after scene after scene of him dealing with, like, his ex-wife and her husband and their daughter.
And it's
their
just
daughter and
motivation
their daughter,
drilled into
and
you.
their daughter. And we've seen enough. We understand his motivations for wanting to rob the
and it's so
NASCAR
odd.
race.
You're right. It's so odd that he would do that too, because he drills that into the audience, but at the same time leaves out so much explanation for what happens in the heist. You don't get a fulfilling wrap up in the end. There's no catharsis going like. Yeah. What Ocean's 11 did well was connect all the dots at the end.
Yeah, and spoiler alert, like, if you're watching this and you haven't seen Logan Lucky and you have some absolutely burning desire to see it for whatever reason, we're going to talk about the ending because it's essential when we're comparing this to Ocean's 11. Very akin to what you just said, and I completely agree with. The Soderbergh Ocean's 11 lays these little breadcrumbs throughout the film about what the resolution and how, like, the heist is going to be completed, how they're gonna trick Benedict, which is Andy Garcia's character, who owns the casinos they're robbing. It seems like it comes out of left field, but if you rewatch the movie, and the movie is infinitely rewatchable, it's honestly one of my favorite movies to rewatch. Yeah. Every time you watch it, you pick on some other new, different nuance, some little detail that explains exactly what's going to happen. The fact that they built a complete replica just to practice the heist actually becomes a key piece of the heist itself.
Yeah, you think they're just doing something to get that feel for it, get the delay the land, essentially. What I enjoy about it is that the beats, if you think about thematically, but more of like what is a scene supposed to make you feel? All of the Ocean's 11 scenes leading up to the end, they're all comedic, like funny, and at the end it's dramatic because that's when they get serious. Right. They're not messing around anymore. They're gonna steal this money. Nobody's gonna step out of line.
Right.
Logan Lucky kind of flipped that on its end because you've got the entire first 2/3 of the movie, they're just talking to each other in really monotone voices. And Adam Driver's, I think, an incredible actor. But
I think so too. Yeah.
The roles were pretty flat. They didn't have much to work with there.
Even Daniel Craig, they brought Daniel Craig in as like that wild card character to help with the heist. He was like the demolitions expert and whatnot. The character building itself, the performance was hilarious. But he had fuck all to do in the movie.
Yeah, he didn't have much to work with either.
The thing that bothered me most was getting back to the Soderbergh Ocean's 11 movie was the fact that everything leading up to the heist built into this really clever and really well written and fun resolution. It was one of those endings where you view the ending and it's like, what just happened? And you think about it, it's like, oh fuck, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. That's incredibly fucking clever. You feel rewarded as a viewer watching that movie because you're allowed to figure that shit out on your own as the resolution is happening. Whereas Lucky Logan
makes you feel smart, right?
Yeah, you're rewarded for it. Whereas Logan Lucky, you're watching this movie and they go through all the steps of this heist and everything's happening, and then the heist is over and it looks like they failed, and the movie brings in this completely bullshit Deus Ex Machina left field crap that explains how the heist actually took place. And at that point watching the movie, I just felt, I don't want to say betrayed, but I felt fucking betrayed. Yeah, I felt robbed of the experience of watching this movie because there was no enjoyment in me figuring out how things were working as they were unfolding. It just, it went through the entire heist, everything happened, and then they went back and said, nope, this is what actually happened. And at that point I was like, fuck you, Logan Lucky. Like, you just maybe sit through this 2-hour-long movie, so at the last 5 minutes you could say, fuck all that, this is what actually happened, just so you can clean everything up at the end. Like,
you can't withhold things from the audience and then say, ha ha ha, you missed it, this is what actually happened.
You can withhold things, but you can't say, ha ha ha, we never showed it to you, but here it is. Like, no. You're alienating your audience when you do that. You make yourself look like a pompous asshole, and you're not trusting your audience.
Yeah,
and you're also making for a synthetic, like unorganic movie-going experience. Mm-hmm. You know, I was pissed off when I saw the resolution for the heist because nothing I just sat through and honestly labored through, because that whole fucking heist was just such a slog of people walking down hallways and talking,
weird
walking
anecdotes.
down. Nothing led up to anything. And it all went nowhere. And then we get to the point where nothing leads to anywhere. And Soderbergh says,
you missed it.
Here's something. No, you didn't even miss it because we didn't show you. Here's something entirely different. Do you like it?
Yeah.
I know.
It's a writing thing. It's one of my favorite authors is Brandon Sanderson. And he has this class where he talks about promises you make as a writer. Mm-hmm. And how he knows this really great author that wrote a fantasy fiction novel that subverted a lot of tropes that people traditionally kind of harp on in fantasy fiction. Mm-hmm. But the beginning of his book is all like standard elves and dwarves and like whatever you normally get in like your standard Tolkien fantasy novel. But then at the end he like completely flips it on its end. And he's going, the reason that didn't work out is because all of the readers that initially bought it in the hopes that he would subvert all these tropes stopped after 100 pages because this wasn't interesting. It's the same old. And then everybody that continued and stuck with it, they loved that stuff, and they got to the end, and then it flipped on its end, and now he's got a dud of a book that doesn't sell because he promised something to the reader and delivered something delivered the opposite.
Yeah.
And it's the same with screenwriting. Whatever you promise in the beginning of the film needs to be showing up in that beginning of the second act. Is really crucial time. That's when you kind of show off everything that you show in the trailer.
Right.
If you look at most movie trailers, they're going to show you a lot of what happens in the second act.
Right.
Right in the beginning before the climax happens, because that's what people go to see the movie for.
Yeah.
And then you expect it to be resolved at the end.
Yeah, I mean, when you
fulfilling way. Yeah.
When you watch a heist movie directed by Steven Soderbergh, you expect a really clever heist with a really clever ending, because that's what you've seen from 3 other Soderbergh heist movies. And for him to have done this is just honestly a very strange choice for him.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a way that he could have made it more rewarding in the end, but I can't because it wasn't set up properly.
It was not set up properly. There was It would need it needed a whole other draft of the screenplay before it went to production, in order to make it work.
One of the characters needed to have been in on the entire thing the whole time,
and we as the audience needed to be in on it in some minor way. Mm-hmm. Some minor way, like, again, spoiler alert: bringing in Logan's sister. We had no idea she was in on the heist at all. So to bring her in at the very last second and say that she was actually in on the heist. She was the one who made, that final stroke to take the actual money while they let the rest of the money go. Who fucking gives a shit at that point? Because you didn't reveal or give us any little hint of something else going on.
And what I don't understand too is Hilary Swank's character, because she was a big name on the poster.
That was the most over-glorified cameo I've seen in a very long time.
And the thing that bugs me is that at the end you don't know if there's a scene at the end where the whole cast essentially is at the bar, and you don't know if she was in on it the whole time or if she's actually there to kind of like have her police retribution, I don't know if they're hinting at a second movie where she's gonna arrest everybody, or like a 5-minute short film, please. Something that doesn't involve another 2 hours.
Yeah, it almost felt like they brought her character in the third act to almost be like that Andy Garcia Benedict character, where it was somebody who was hip to what they were doing. It was going to try and outsmart them, and they would have to outsmart her and get away with it. But literally nothing happened. So she was there, she asked a bunch of questions, and nobody knew anything, and everybody just went their separate ways, and it was literally fucking pointless.
Yeah. So tell me this. A lot of people really enjoyed this movie. It's got great reviews on like Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic, and stuff. What makes you think people enjoy this movie?
Please leave a comment below and tell us if you liked Logan Lucky. Why?
I mean, there's some performances there that are a little bit out of the box. I think Daniel Craig did something good with what he was given.
Yeah, and it's something wildly different for him to do.
It is, right. And so it was entertaining to see. It was interesting to watch.
Yeah.
Him kind of, he was the opposite of Adam Driver's character, basically.
Right.
And they played off each other, which was good. I think those performances were pretty great. Channing Tatum was believable as kind of like a backcountry hick that tried to be a little bit smarter than he actually was. Had some, well, the motivation was drilled into us the entire movie, so we know why he was doing it.
Oh yeah, we needed one more scene of him hanging out with his daughter and being sad about not being able to connect with his daughter, and we really needed that like 15-minute scene of his daughter singing that John Denver song about whatever state they were in.
I've only seen this like 100 times in every like sports movie ever. I mean, I'm trying to think of like, if you've ever seen The Fighter, have you seen that?
Yeah.
I think they wrote that motivation off in like one line, and it was so much better. Like, you get that he's doing it for his brother, but he's like, yeah, I've got a kid, I got my daughter, and they have similar scenes where he goes up and he says, hey, I want custody. They don't lay into it though. It's just like he's fighting because it's in his blood. His family's about it. It's the only thing he's really good at, and they do it. They nail it. But in this movie, it's like we totally went off track from Ocean's 11.
Yeah.
But I think a good example of conveying your character motivation. Fighter, I think, is an incredible movie.
Fighter was great. Yeah. Excellent movie.
Christian Bale,
that dude just fucking reinvents himself as a human being every time he takes a new role.
Yeah, that was incredible to watch. But yeah, Oceans. Let's get back to that.
Okay, we should.
Get back to Oceans. I can't not walk away from watching that movie thinking like, wow, I just like learned a new thing about filmmaking, a new thing about how you are supposed to tell stories, and it's all to do with characters, I think.
And it's the cinematography and the lighting as well. I mean, there's that almost iconic scene now where they're all in Ruben's house and they're going over the plans of how they're going to do all this, and there's just 1,000 different character beats all hitting you at once. Like, there's the scene where Lee, who is, he asks a question in the middle of it, and he says it in Mandarin. And Rusty, Brad Pitt's like,
oh yeah,
we've already thought about it, like, we can't do it.
Yeah,
How the fuck does Rusty know Mandarin? Like, nobody questions that, but it's such a great character
and
beat.
It's written off. They don't put any extra time on it or anything. Like, hang on, Rusty, do you speak Mandarin? Because Yen just said something.
It's just a cool little
everybody
character.
understands. He knows Mandarin. Let's move on.
Yeah.
He never speaks English except for one of the funniest lines in the movie.
Yeah. What fucking Ben? Love it.
So great.
Yeah. But there's another shot of Saul, and he's being a little bit skeptical, and he's asking questions about everything, and he wants to know more about the plan, and he's on like the third, like, if you like, the rule of thirds is you divide the screen into thirds. Saul is to the far right of the frame, and in the center frame is Linus, portrayed by Matt Damon, who up to this point has been very kind of hesitant, very kind of skeptical about this whole thing. He's asking questions as well. He's leaning up against a post. He's out of focus.
The composition reflects what they're trying to
Exactly. Like, you learn so much about Linus as a character just by him being out of focus in the background.
He hangs back when everybody comes into the thing. He's a newcomer. He knows he's not necessarily welcome, but he is a part of the team because he's got the same background of that same community. Yeah. Which is what's great.
And then him being a skeptic actually plays heavily into the plot later when he's tailing Danny, trying to learn if Danny's motivations for the entire heist are pure. Not necessarily, well, we won't say pure because they're robbing casinos.
Sure.
But if they are in the best interest of the rest of the team and they are focused directly on stealing the money.
Which sort of saves their ass, because Rusty has to put in some contingency plans and it works,
But was it a contingency plan, or was it the plan all along to get Danny flagged? Get him locked in the room where his cohort, who we paid off, was supposed to beat him up so he could sneak out and then go to the shaft. And then, so Linus was actually kind of part of the whole scheme, and they kind of played off his skepticism to strengthen the plan as a whole.
Right.
It's such a great fucking movie.
And you can tell that he's being kind of tailored to be the new Danny Rusty character.
Sure, because he's being groomed.
Yeah,
he's
because
learning all this shit. Yeah,
they know about the inner workings of every detail of this plot, but everybody else not. They know, but they are not necessarily involved.
Right.
Yeah, I think, and the fact that we can discuss that right now, like, what is it, 16 years later, and go.
And I guarantee you, like, of the 5 or 6 people watching this, somebody just learned something new about that movie, because the movie is so nuanced and so layered, and there's so much shit going on, and it's another reason why Logan Lucky was so fucking horrifically disappointed, because we know Soderbergh is so brilliantly capable of all that nuanced shit.
Maybe he needs to take do another adaptation of something that was kind of old and didn't quite hit the nail on the head. Because I think about the scenes in Ocean's 11 that translate directly. There's a couple of them, like Frank Sinatra has that conversation with his lady love in the hotel.
Yeah, which is the scene that takes place in both movies. Yeah,
and there's the munitions thing with Sammy Davis Jr. and Don Cheadle has the same kind of. The scene with the pinch where he like kind of covers up and does a thing,
right? Yeah,
and that's hilarious. Yeah. And every time that there's a direct translation, they up it a little bit. They throw in Soderbergh threw in another little curveball,
right?
That scene where Sinatra's having that conversation, and the new one, George Clooney's having the conversation with Julia Roberts, and it's a boxing match. That's what they call it in screenwriting. Is you have two forces that really shouldn't be. What's the worst thing that could happen here?
Right.
Oh, if Johnny showed up, knock. Right. Sam opens the door, Johnny's there. Right. Now that's a boxing match because they're going to have an interaction.
Right.
Danny and Tess are having this conversation. How do we change this? Throw in Terry Benedict.
Which the original didn't have. There was no foil for Danny Ocean to combat as he's doing all of this, which was sorely lacking in the original, I think.
And it wasn't a throwaway scene too, because that carries throughout the entire movie. There's a B story that's present that weaves in with the A story that is kind of the impetus behind why Danny wants to do this, and it's all kicked off in that one scene.
Yeah.
And it's great because you get to show off a little bit of Ocean's class with the whiskey and a whiskey thing, and you also get to show that he's in front of the person that he thinks is taking away the most valuable thing in his life, which is Tess.
Right.
And he can still be kind of classy. He can still say, I'm going to rob everything from you right now and walk away clean.
Yeah, and then he literally takes both his money and he takes his wife back.
Yeah.
See, what's cool about the Ocean's 11 2001 version is it boils down to, the 3 tropes of conflict. There's man versus man versus self, man versus nature or the unknown.
Environment, yeah.
Yeah. So in Ocean's 11, the 2001 version, the Soderbergh version, just in that scene alone with Danny and Tess and Benedict, we have man versus self because we know Danny's got a fucked up past. He's trying to atone for that, and he's trying to get Tess back. He's also got motivations, man versus man, to fuck over Benedict, who is a dick face, and also has his wife. The 1960 version, where is that?
It's not. It's just an awkward conversation that he has.
Well, the movie in general, there is no man versus man because there's no foil. There's no villain or somebody to root against. There's no man versus self because none of these people have any conflicting ideas about what they're doing or distractions about what they're doing. And there's, I guess you could say, man versus the unknown or nature because they're all trying to formulate this plan to rob these banks, but they meet with such little opposition when they do it.
And I think the motivation behind it in the original movie was totally different. It was just kind of cast him as this player because I don't remember correctly. It might have been like his ex-wife or his soon-to-be ex-wife character.
Yeah, they weren't divorced.
And
they were estranged.
And he just did not care about their conversation whatsoever. Yeah. He was like, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. And they were just I think they were trying to play him up as he's a player and he's suave.
Unaffected.
He's unaffected and he's.
But that makes the character less interesting, whereas we know Danny Ocean, played by George Clooney, has that chink in his armor. Tess is his weakness.
It is.
And again, it plays into that whole plot line about Linus following him and learning what his weakness is, and them talking about kicking him out of the thing. And then Surprise is actually involved, and Linus was another layer of the deception to help the entire heist get underway. It's so fucking well written.
They're pirates. They're pirates, and Danny Ocean's the captain. Rusty's a first mate. And he just learned that...
Excellent analogy.
He just learned that...
Up top.
Thank you.
That's great.
They learned that the captain just sent them into like the worst storm.
Yeah.
Because of a girl, you know. And now what he has to think of the rest of the crew. Yeah. What do you do then? What do you do in that situation?
You would mutiny.
You do a mutiny, and you take the plucky upstart kid that kind of is doing everything captain like,
and now you're the first mate. So first mate becomes captain, and the guy who orchestrated the mutiny gets that position of power into the, you know, which in this case was the key role of actually rappelling down into the, you know, the vault and taking care of all that shit.
Just putting the money in the bags, doing the dirty work.
Yeah. So, boiling it down, the 1960 version is fun, but it's an outdated version of fun. Watching it now versus watching it then, I'm sure it was great.
Yeah, I'm sure it was super enjoyable, but this is 50 years almost.
Yeah, watching it now, as much as it pains me to say it, because I am a huge fan of Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr.
It's more than 50 years. It's 50,
like
almost 60.
70 years or something, yeah.
57 years, yeah.
Well, I was thinking in terms of the remake versions.
Oh, yeah.
But it's almost quaint watching it now, which I mean is just a natural evolution of time. And you know, you watch any movie, like you watch Gone with the Wind, as brilliant and amazing as it is, some of it is really, really dated. You know, it's what you call a timeless classic, but in terms of technicalities, how it was built, it's out of date. Yeah, which is part of the charm. But
I would recommend the Soderbergh version to almost anyone. But the 1960 version, you've got to have kind of an eye for, or an appreciation for older movies.
Sure.
Because if you met somebody that, you know, really digs Casablanca, for instance, you're like, okay, I know that you would probably appreciate X, Y, and Z movie, but, you know, somebody that goes to the movies and sees the newest Transformers movie, they're gonna watch the first 5 minutes of the 1960s version and go, what am I doing with my life right now?
Yeah, well, I think maybe Casablanca is a bad example, because I think Casablanca is one of those legitimate timeless classics that is also incredibly nuanced and well written. And even by today's standards,
it's not a great example.
There's a handful. Well, no, it's a good example, but it's one worth like talking about. But there's also movies like, okay, I just watched Shin Godzilla, which is the latest reboot of the Godzilla franchise from Toho. It's really good. I enjoyed it a lot. It's also very slow. It's very much in that old style of Japanese filmmaking. But the original 1954 Godzilla is just super slow and moody and. But again, it's but there's so much layer there, and there's so much nuance, and the entire Godzilla thing was born out of anxiety from the post-atomic bomb era of World War II. There's so much going on that it's an old movie, but some of it looks really fucking good, and the ideas are still crisp and fresh because it's such a compelling idea. Like, the thesis of that movie is compelling. Seven Samurai by Kurosawa, maybe too much of an example, because Kurosawa literally wrote most of the language for modern film. Frame shots, which Soderbergh uses a lot, which most American or just modern filmmakers in general use a lot of. The layered building of characters, you know, there's 7 of them, and all of them have different backstories that all compile them together. So actually, Seven Samurai might be a good comparison for Ocean's 11.
Now that you say it. Yeah. Well, it's an example of another really well-written character drama.
Right.
So when you focus primarily on why are these people coming together? Right. What is their backstory? Do they have a real reason to be here? And if you address that in a way that's not like hitting the nail on the head like directly, then I think you've got a pretty good story start, you know?
Yeah.
Now create a compelling plot, and you've got something good. You know?
Yeah, but I mean, in Seven Samurai, there's like 3 or 4 main characters. You know, there's Kikuchiyo, there's Ganbei, there's Katsushiro. I'm probably saying that wrong, or I may have the wrong name altogether. But there are still some characters who fall by the wayside because they're just as supporting characters, and that is the case with Ocean's 11, the 1960 version as well. But Seven Samurai also has such great, amazing motivation in development for those main characters, especially Kikuchiyo, which we learn all his backstory, like why he wanted to be a samurai, why he's doing all the things he do. That it almost makes up for the fact that some of the characters are background characters, whereas in the 1960 version of Ocean's 11, nobody really has strong motivations.
Nope.
So like let's say like 7 or 8 of the 11 are literally just like background guys doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, they're the guys that are like taking out the guards and then you don't see them again.
But that's not excusable because the motivation for the main characters like Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. is not strong enough to kind of overlook that type of stuff. The characterization in the original 1960 Ocean's 11, I think, was just not strong at all. Mm-hmm. The whole thing, in retrospect, felt almost like an excuse just to get all the Rat Pack together in a movie and say, here's all the Rat Pack in a movie, you know?
Well, they must have started with, we want to put like a company from the military, we want them to rob a bank, what do we do? And they were like, oh, we need at least like 10, 11 people. But cool.
They really only needed like
Sammy
4.
just wrote this EO11 song. It sounds great. Well, let's do 11. And then that was it. Because, yeah, half the movie, you don't even see most of the majority of Ocean's 11. You only see
even Dean fucking Martin, like we said at the beginning of this podcast, like his entire role is for whatever reason,
what is that song
just to croon and play that New Year's song. That's literally all he does. He plays no active role in the heist. Cool, we got to see Dean Martin play the piano and sing in a movie, which was a huge big ass deal in the 1960s, but
he literally plays Ain't That a Kick in the Head, like, over and over and over.
That would be like a Disney movie. If they put out a Disney movie today and they had Bruno Mars do one of the songs, and it had nothing to do with the plot, but Bruno Mars, like an animated version of Bruno Mars, walks out and does a song and dance number, and then disappears. Cool, we saw fucking Bruno Mars, but what the fuck did that have to do with the movie? Why was he in the movie?
And nowadays, you'd build that in as a mechanic to tell time.
Yeah,
so, like, because a song is a certain amount of time. It's 3 to 5 minutes or something. Of this song, he plays "Ain't That a Kick in the Head" on the piano while the heist is going on, so you know how much time it's taking.
Right.
Like, you show Dean Martin and he's playing the piano, or nowadays the equivalent of Dean Martin playing the piano, and then in the background you've got people like robbing the bank, and then you cut away, you cut back, and he's in the middle of his song, and the crowd's doing something different. And then you cut away to the squad, and somebody else gets taken out, and you cut back, and he's at the end of the song.
That would have been great if there had been a shot of Dean Martin playing the piano, and over-the-shoulder shot of him playing, and you see the other dudes from Ocean's 11 going through and carrying through the heist, and he's actually distracting everybody with his amazing performance. Fucking A, that's how you build worse for that character.
It's not that hard.
Instead, it's a medium shot. He's like, "May all acquaintance be forgotten," blah 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 blah. Great. And why did he get a cut?
A kick in the head.
Let's talk about the resolution of these two movies too while we're at it, because we're about at the hour mark.
Yeah.
We should wrap this up.
So the thing that I really love is that you really think at the very end of the movie that you're hitting the end of the second act.
Right.
Because it seems like this is what is Save the Cat call it? I forget what Blake Snyder calls it. Dark Night of the Soul, I think, and which essentially just like, this is where your characters hit rock bottom because they failed at the heist.
Right.
Which, to some extent might be still an interesting movie to watch because they could have some payout in the end.
Sure.
If they don't get the money, at least maybe Danny gets Tess back, something like that.
Yeah.
There could be redemption. But he pulls a rug out from under you in a good way. Like, you think this is the resolution, it's not. Right. Those cops that just walked by, those were our boys.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Let me show you how I did that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like in The Prestige, where Michael Caine has the whole thing where he's like the presentation and the turn and the Prestige.
Yeah.
The Prestige is, I'm explaining to you, is essentially how I did this thing and how pretty cool that was. Let's talk about this illusion.
Right. Yeah, and Soderbergh does it amazingly in Ocean's 11, the 2001 version.
There is no real
in the 1960 version. Which is actually one of the callbacks that I think the 2001 version has with Saul. There's a scene in the 2001 version where Saul, the older guy, he fakes his death. He fakes essentially a heart attack, and his death and ends up being part of the plot, which I think was part of the homage to the 1960 version, where one of the guys has a heart problem. He ends up collapsing and dying in the street while this is going on. And you think it might be part of the ploy, part of the whole heist, But no, he's fucking dead. So Ocean's 10 at that point. They decide to brilliantly hide the money in the guy's coffin, and they all attend the funeral, and they're waiting for that guy to be buried.
So grave rob.
Yeah. So the plan is basically they're gonna wait for their friend to be buried. They're gonna dig him up, and they're gonna take the money. They're gonna say their final farewells, and they're gonna take off. And then they learn that the body's being cremated.
Yeah.
Which, okay, first of all, I don't know how it was back in the day in the 1960s, but I'm pretty sure they didn't cremate the body with the casket.
With the coffin, yeah. Like,
so
what?
Somebody found all that money, but our heroes didn't find the money. So the last shot of the movie is just our dudes walking down the street in Vegas, empty-handed.
And they're like, ah, shucks.
They lost, and it's, oh, darn, we lost. That's a shitty fucking ending for all the shit we just went through.
Well, with
those characters.
If you watch the new Ocean's 11, you know, for the first time in the theater in 2001, you've seen the Rat Pack version. You're like, okay, I know this isn't going to be a happy ending. Okay, right. You see Saul go down, and they've been playing at it the entire movie. You know, he's like eating the collar. He's tugging on his collar. He's eating like Rolaids, like the whole movie basically.
Yeah, and there's that scene where they're fitting him for a suit, and Danny Ocean asks him, "Are you up for this?" And Saul's like,
if you ask me that again, Daniel, you will not wake up the next morning.
Yeah, it's so a great beat. Yeah.
And and you think, okay, he's actually dead. I was kind of expecting that.
Yeah.
Because I've been following along with this movie. I'm being rewarded for that. Now, when we do the reveal, you see Rusty come in, and he's the doctor, and you're like, oh, shit.
And it's such a cool, like, out of focus into focus. And it's like, oh, you sons of
And he does this over-the-top, like, doctor routine where he's giving him CPR, and he's like a
TV
we lost
doctor.
him. Yeah. And you're like, oh, he's alive. That dude's alive.
Yeah, at that point, you know that everything's going to work out fine.
Yeah, and then you're duly rewarded instead of being robbed. You're rewarded for, like, following along the entire time and knowing that Saul was going to go down. And then understanding that was kind of a mechanic the entire time. They played to the pre-existing condition that he was, you know, not feeling very well.
Right.
What, you know, which makes sense. Like, if you're a thief in this situation, what do? Saul's not capable of much, but he's not doing too well. It would make sense for him to kind of like kick the bucket randomly.
Right.
Let's use that. Let's play into it. And that'll give us a little minor distraction while the pinch is going off and chaos ensues in this casino.
Right, exactly.
Perfect. It plays in really well. And you get rewarded again by going, oh, this is all part of the plan, and now I'm seeing it. They're walking out with the bags. Like, great.
Yeah, but again, like the whole resolution of the 1960 version, just we see the payoff of the whole Danny and Tess relationship, where again there was a foil for Danny to combat against, which created drama. Because he wanted to get his wife back, and he had to go through Benedict to do that. So he sets Benedict up as part of the heist, like a secondary heist, to expose Benedict as being an asshole for Tess to see, to realize she's with the wrong guy, so she gets back with Danny. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit misogynistic. It's a little bit like damsel in distress type of thing. But there's nothing like that in the 1960 version. We see all these scenes, 2 or 3 scenes with Danny and his estranged wife, in the 1960 version, and there's no resolution about them.
It's just kind of like a side
together.
Character background that has no bearing on the plot whatsoever.
There's no scene where Danny wins her back. Like, he's largely indifferent. You can tell he wants to get her back. Mm-hmm. He makes an effort to get her back just in those dialogue scenes, but there's no payoff. There's no why were we subjugated to those scenes of those two talking and building up the chemistry between these two actors for there to be nothing at the end. Like, there's no scene where Tess comes to her senses, or Danny does something dashing and daring and wins her back and, you know, proves himself. There's nothing.
Yeah, and why? And, you know, like, it would be, why would you do that? I just don't. It would be like now in the 2001 version, like showing some random aside about like family members of weird members of the cast, like what's Basher's family doing in London, whatever, you know?
Yeah, like nobody gives a shit.
No one,
so
why would you throw that in?
You haven't developed a reason for us to give a shit, and there's no reason for us to suddenly give a shit at the end.
And I'm glad they didn't. Yeah,
because the film itself had no resolution for it. There was nothing to it. The film abruptly ends with them losing the money, and that's it. There's like that charming shot of them all walking sullenly along, like oh geez, and that's fucking it.
You don't get really any backstory until the second movie, when Benedict's rounding up the whole crew.
Sure, and that's the 2001 version. Yeah,
it's interesting because they're little asides and they're funny and they're entertaining.
Right,
and you only get 10 seconds. I'm thinking of the one with the twins where one of them just gets married and Benedict goes, "Tell them why you're not going to Disneyland." You know, like
yeah.
And that's funny, and that's it though. They don't lay into it anymore. You don't get any more backstory until Ocean's 13, where Ruben gets sick and they have to figure out another way to get back at Al Pacino, which is
right,
an entertaining plot.
But even in and of itself, like Ocean's 11 is a complete, well-rounded experience with a beginning, a middle, and a very satisfying resolution. Whereas the 1960 version is not satisfying at all, I don't think. If you wanted to see Dean Martin play piano, you wanted to see Sammy Davis Jr. croon and dance a little bit and sing a song, and you want to see Frank Sinatra do some funny impressions and be charming, you got what you wanted. But if you actually wanted to have a complete film-going experience, it's not there. It's just not. So they think they're being clever and funny and cute with that resolution of them losing the money, the dude gets cremated, and all that thing. They're walking along and they're defeated. They didn't get what they wanted. We don't know why they wanted it in the first place, so we don't give a shit the fact that they didn't get it.
There's no, exactly. There's no stakes.
Yeah, there's zero stakes. In a movie based in Las Vegas where betting is king, there is zero stakes.
So I'm coming to the end of my beer, and I think we're coming to the end of this podcast. But before we get there...
What do you guys think? Yeah.
Almost there.
Yeah.
I think before we get there, we really need to address Ocean's Ocho.
I don't know much about it. I know it's an all-women remake, which could be fun. It's sure. Who's directing it? Who's writing and directing it?
I don't know who's directing. I know that some of the people that are in it, there's a couple pop artists. I think Sandra Bullock is in it.
Yeah, it's not Melissa McCarthy, is it?
I really hope not.
Isn't like Shakira or somebody in it?
I think Shakira is. She's one of those artists that I mentioned. Sandra Bullock is the criminal mastermind.
Okay.
And it's got Cate Blanchett.
So
and
she's
Hathaway.
Danielle Ocean.
Oh, it's Rihanna.
It's not, Rihanna Ocean. Rihanna's
Rihanna, Cate Blanchett, Anne Hathaway, Helena Bonham Carter.
That's a great fucking cast.
Mindy Kaling.
Okay.
Sarah Paulson. So Matt Damon's in it, so that must be the connection to the Oceans.
Is it going to be in the same universe?
James
or
Corden.
Is it going to be like a...
It must be.
It's Matt Damon. He was in the originals type of... look, there's Bill Murray. He was a Ghostbuster. And I don't want to draw any comparisons between this and the Ghostbuster movie, but
it's coming out next year. I don't really know the plot whatsoever.
I bet they rob something.
I'm sure that's part of it.
Bet there's some funny stuff.
Oh, here we go. Danny Ocean's estranged sister Debbie attempts to pull off the heist of the century at New York City's star-studded annual Met
they're
Gala.
making them related?
Evidently, Debbie Ocean.
No.
Her first stop is to assemble the perfect crew. 1, 2, 8 people. Yeah. I really hope they don't go like full comedy with it, because that...
They have to make it Danny's cousin.
No, not cousin. Sister. Estranged sister.
No, it's even fucking worse.
Yeah, it's not fantastic.
Do your own thing. Make it completely original. That's so... Matt Damon's going to be playing a Linus. He's probably going to be like a mentor role, like, oh, you're doing the heist wrong. This is what you should be doing. So I learned from the master, George Clooney.
I'm not sure how I feel about it.
It could be great. But
Gary Ross is directing it.
I'm not familiar with it.
Gary Ross did the first Hunger Games movie. What else did he do? Oh, there he goes. Pleasantville, Seabiscuit.
Pleasantville was great.
Big, Tale of Despero. I wish they would have done more of an obscure connection. It would have been more dramatic and interesting. But Estranged Sisters...
I mean, it's going to be one of those films that really has no reason to exist in the first place. But if you're going to make it, just do something completely separate and different.
Yeah.
Why make it be... It's got to be George Clooney's sister. That's fucking dumb.
Soderbergh said after the third Ocean's movie that he wouldn't do another one because Bernie Mac passed away.
Yeah,
so they knew they had to do something. Yeah, they knew they had to do something different. What do you do next? Well, Soderbergh stepped back. He's retired from filmmaking until Logan Lucky.
Yeah.
Still think you're a great director, Soderbergh. I just think Logan Lucky wasn't great.
Take another break. Come back. Spend some time on the next one.
Make some recommendations maybe for Ocean's 8. Tell them to not make Debbie Ocean. How do you even? That is. I just read that, and that is.
It deflates
my goodness,
the entire
it's
film.
so it deflates it off the bat. It's like a direct replication. Danny Debbie. I know there are parents that name their kids like weird, funny things that like coincide with each other, but why Debbie Ocean? They're just like, this is the female version of Oceans. That's really what they're saying.
She's following in the family business. I guarantee you it'll say that in the trailer.
And it's gonna be so.
Guarantee you.
So it would be so cool if they just like organically had a crew put together of like 8 ladies that were in this same thieving community. That would be awesome. You know, like they've got connections with Julia Roberts or something, and then she has like one scene in the movie where she's like, "Yeah, I heard from Danny that they might need some help or something."
No, that's lame.
It is lame. I don't know.
That shit.
I can't think of a idea off the top of my head.
Spin-offs. That's why the majority of spin-offs in TV don't work. Joni Loves Chachi failed. Mork and Mindy is the one exception because fucking Robert Williams is amazing. But TV spin-offs just don't fucking work. Movie spin-offs are lame as shit. Because you were constantly and utterly beholden to what came before it. Because you've allowed yourself to be shackled to it.
Well, and that's what I'm saying is they didn't need to be trapped making this movie. They
could have just done something completely different. Entirely separate. Didn't need to be related at all. It could have just been an all-women heist movie.
I would watch it.
I would have. I
will watch it.
I was intrigued up until you literally just read the part where she's Danny Ocean's sister, and now I'm like, you lazy sons of bitches. What else have you cut corners on?
Yeah. One of them's gonna be like in a relationship with Matt Damon.
I was thinking the same thing. It almost sounded misogynistic in my head. I wanted to say it. It doesn't say it sound misogynistic when you say it now, but I was thinking like, oh, that's my husband, or I hooked up with him one time, or yeah, there's gonna be stupid little connections throughout all of that.
They're really peeling it back layer after layer because I mean the Rat Pack version was very misogynistic,
incredibly.
And then the 2001 version was like still all dudes, and Julia Roberts was somewhat of like a.
She was a prize.
She was a prize. Yeah, it was like really objectified, and then Ocean's Ocho, they're trying to just flip that on its end, and there's got to be more subtle ways. There's got to be a better way to pull that together.
You and I could write a better screenplay.
Sister of Danny Ocean. I really hope that we're wrong. That like we watch Ocean's Ocho and they just like knock our socks off.
I would be delighted if it ends up being a great, solid heist movie. Sure, yeah, I don't want the movie to fail, but I'm already seeing the pieces in place for it to be crap.
Starting with she's Danny Ocean's sister.
Yeah, and I love you, Sandra Bullock. You were my first childhood crush, no joke. So I want this movie to succeed. But fucking Demolition Man, I'm pretty sure that's when I started puberty. I'm pretty sure. And Speed, oh my god, dude.
But can you pull off I'm saddled with all of the Ocean's 11 background and
you're dragging the film down as you're making it already.
It has to be completely separate.
It has to be.
Maybe that's let's not end on such a sour note.
No, what's something positive to talk about?
What movies are coming out that you're stoked for? That you're most excited for?
I want to see Mother.
Avengers 3? No, Thor 3 is coming out.
Yeah, dude, Thor Ragnarok is gonna be great. I love the director.
We've got T-minus
if anybody hasn't seen What We Do in the Shadows, just a fun little nuanced, strange little vampire movie. But it's so funny. Subtly funny, but also slapstick funny at the same time. It's great. So
you got 6 months for Ready Player One.
Yeah. So what's out and what's happening right now? Like I want to see it.
I hear good things.
I just want. Well,
I'm terrified by that movie.
Really?
Yeah. When the original one came out, I went to a Blockbuster Video. Those used to be a thing, kids. And and I saw a trailer where I don't know, is that like bathroom scene where all of a sudden the giant clown pops up, and my mom collected clowns for a bit. And people used to give her clowns. Yeah. And they used to be in our crawl space, and I crawled down in there, open up boxes, and then there's a clown, and I'm just I was terrified. Yeah. Couldn't do it. Now
you might want to watch if you're talking about the 1990 miniseries with like Tim Curry's Pennywise, right? You might want to watch it just because by today's standards, it's very, very cheesy.
Cheesy, yeah.
Yeah, it's you'll watch it. Tim Curry's great. He's a fantastic actor. I love him. Amazing in Home Alone 2, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm trying to be super serious.
No. It was a bad joke. I love Tim Curry. He's great, and he's genuinely creepy and great as Pennywise. But it's got like Harry from Night Court in it, and Annette O'Toole who ended up playing I think she was like Lana Lang in the Superman movies, and it's super cheesy. It was made for TV, so it's really goofy. It was creepy as fuck when you're like, I think I was like 7 when it came out.
What I hear.
Watch it today, and I guarantee your fears will be dispelled.
Yeah. I'm sure. What I heard about it and what entices me to see it is it reminds people of the style of filmmaking that was in Stranger Things.
Yeah.
The kind of like, I'm gonna capitalize on the 80s aesthetic. And
it's got one of the kids from Stranger Things in it too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's honestly, I think making a movie about, or like a remake of it, was like the perfect time to do it right now, because that whole 80s aesthetic is in vogue right now. Like everybody's super hyped, like amped up about it right now.
I definitely am. I love it,
dude. I cannot fucking wait for Stranger Things season 2.
I can't wait for that, and I really hope that they pile it on for Ready Player One.
Yeah, I hope so too.
I don't know that Spielberg is gonna do it though.
I have already reserved myself and readied myself
for a flop there.
Well, I'm completely invested. Well, maybe not invested. I've acclimated myself to the idea that the movie's going to be very different from the book, because as much as I love the book, it's not going to translate well to a movie. So Spielberg, I think, is masterful enough to know when and where to change things to make it work for a movie. So while I would love to see a straight up adaptation of the book itself, because I love the book, I recognize that it's just not gonna work.
We'll do a review. I wrote a blog about it. Go check it out. It's called 8-Bit Breakdown of Ready Player One.
I read it. I liked it. It was good. It was solid writing. It was excellent writing. So yeah, I'm ready for the movie to be very different from the book, because it has to be. So yeah.
Maybe we should end it there.
I mean, we could
sign off.
Yeah, we should finish our beers. It's just a little bit of beer left. So, once again, yeah, dude, the Rupture from Odell Brewing.
Check it out.
I am consistently impressed by Odell, but
likewise, yeah.
This is some, honestly, like, as cliche as it sounds, this is some next level shit.
It is next level. It's cool. Yeah. I really dig. I dig the design of the beer itself and the cans.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Love what they're about. They're sustainable. They do a monthly charity giveaway where they let a certain charity use their premises for meetings. They donate money to them. I'm pretty sure they probably give them beer,
I would hope so.
Yeah, they're just an all-around good company based out of Fort Collins. Go check them out. If you haven't had Odell beer, I'd recommend the Mercenary Double IPA is really good.
Mercenary might be
90 shilling is pretty great. Also, it's one of their more, standard core beers, you could call it. 60
shilling is really good. 90 shilling is amazing. You ever had the 120 shilling?
No, I haven't.
I've had it.
Is it good? Oh yeah. They've got one just called India Pale Ale. That's your standard IPA. They're one of the breweries that did a kind of core brews first and then expanded a little bit, and I think it really served them well because they nailed down their brewing process, and now they're doing something a little bit more adventurous. And
Four Peaks is the same thing.
Working really well.
Yeah. I'm sorry, not Four Peaks. Fuck Four Peaks.
Sorry.
I'm not going to edit that out. I'm not going to edit that out. I am so sorry. New Belgium. Is who I was referring to, because New Belgium did the exact same thing. They mastered their core competencies.
Their Abbey, their Fat Tire,
and they branched out now, and now once again we've seen really off the wall shit like the Atomic Pumpkin, which is a pumpkin beer featuring cinnamon, nutmeg, and habanero. And it's really fucking good.
And it works, yeah. How do you get that to work?
Yeah.
Now you grind up hop flowers and you've got a great pale ale that's citrusy and reminds you of an IPA, but it doesn't have the IBUs. Fantastic.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love most about craft beer is the fact that it is an art form. There's a constant evolution and a constant innovation and a constant desire to try something new just to see if it works. And if it fails, whatever. But if it succeeds, it could be like the next big awesome thing. So I have no doubt that once this succeeds, and it will succeed because it's delicious, that a lot of breweries are going to be doing like fresh ground hops.
They'll try it, yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see like microbreweries here in Arizona try that. So Scottsdale Beer Company, I know you're watching. Fate, you're probably watching too. Goldwater.
Watching.
Try grinding up your hops and brewing them that day.
Also, in the Southwest, consider agave. The shop is just starting.
Yeah.
The Desert Pale Ale.
The shop is great. Yeah.
Got a pale ale with cut. It's very much an IPA cut with agave, but it's a pale. So it's a new kind of cool thing that somebody's doing in the brewing industry. I like that.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love most about the brewing industry is there's always something new to try. Somebody's always trying something different and cool. It's
definitely.
It's very much like the renaissance of beer that we're experiencing right now.
It is.
It's great. So
sounds like another video right there.
Oh, we could do a whole new video on that. Yeah.
Signing off.
Yeah. Is that it? That's how we're gonna end the video? Fuck you!
That's it. I think that's it.
I think that's it. Yeah. All right. Cool.
All right, yeah.
So as always, thanks for stopping by. Check out the website, theseconddraft.com. THE2NDDRAFT.com. Or if you're not wanting to stray too far from YouTube, leave a comment below. I don't know if you're on YouTube and commenting. I'm on YouTube commenting. Paige is on YouTube commenting.
Yes.
We would love to interact with you because, as always, this whole project is a conversation. So everything we've said today is literally just talking points for you. So talk back, and we will talk back.
Especially if you have bad things to say about Ocean's 11, because apparently we love them.
Or if you have good things to say about Logan Lucky, because we would love an alternate viewpoint of that film.
Yeah.
Because that's a film that people really love it, but nobody's been able to tell me why so far. So I would love to talk about why somebody loved this movie. Not because I want to argue with you, but because I really want to see that opposing viewpoint.
Yeah, if you have any ideas for topics coming up, let us know. We'll break down your favorite movie next.
Yeah, and we should keep going with this series where we watch an original movie, we watch a remake. So if you've got ideas about what original/remake combo we should watch, let us know, and we'll make that happen. So thank you as always, guys. We love you. Not as much as we love beer, but we love you. And,
you're getting there. You're almost there.
There's like 50 of you or something now, so you're earning our love. We hope we're earning your love. But thank you guys.
Slowly but surely.
All right. Cheers, and we hope you guys keep coming back.
Cheers. All right.
EO11. Sammy Davis Jr.
He's super good.
He was good.
We're gonna figure out how to put the harmonica. It's happening.